Evening and salutations, my soap opera fans. So, let's start off with this whole Rocco fiasco. So, Dalton dragged Rocco's down to the campus security to sit there and get his ass arrested. And Laura sees this, and first of all, Laura's like, "Get your goddamn hands off my grandson," right? Laura throughout this entire time is here's the thing, she calls it like she's trying to talk him down. What she's really doing is also sitting there like low-key gaslighting him, which is, listen, that would be irritating for anyone, right? At first she's all like, well, was there a sign, was the door unlocked and this, that, and the third? And Boyle's is like, all right, let's call the cops. Laura's like, no one's sent the arrest of my son, no one's going anywhere. I'm like, girl, you are sitting there giving Boyles even more ammunition. Just the way you're sitting there displaying, favoritism, because he did actually break the law, right? And eventually the cops does get there. And I think it was the officer or was it Boyles, one of them was like, okay, listen, we can sit there and say this whole thing right now, because you need a key to sit there and get in. So if he had a key, that means that he had intent on sitting there breaking in. And they pretty much search him, or you tell him to sit there and empty his pockets, and he does, and they got the key fob right there. So they arrest him, they take him down to the station. Now Charlotte and Danny go to, I'm about to call Kelly's, go to Bobby's and tell Jason and Britt everything that wound up happening. Britt takes Charlotte down to the hospital to talk to Lulu, and Jason takes Danny to go to Alexis. And, he explains the whole story and everything that wound up happening. He wants to sit there and turn himself in to, try to make it, make Rocco be in less trouble. But Alexis is like, that's a bad idea for a couple of reasons. One, your sacrifice is not going to lessen, Rocco being in trouble. Also, Drew finds out, he's going to make sure that they'll throw the book at you. And also, you are definitely not going to be able to sit there and see Scout. And Jason also is like, you need to sit there and respect Rocco's sacrifice. You talk about the fact that Rocco made a sound because they were all going to get in trouble if Rocco didn't sit there and distract Dalton. So he was like, you need to sit there and just kind of, respect that or whatever. Charlotte tells Dante and Lulu what up happened to Rocco, and Britt being at the hospital already or going back to the hospital, which I don't know why she went back to the hospital. But anyway, she was there and she went up. Oh, never mind. Britt eventually wound up going down to the police station. So they tell Lulu and Dante everything, and Emma and Rocco over here, and they're like, "Oh shit!" Like, Emma realized just how much she effed up. Which, in all reality, yeah, she was going to say, I told him not to do it, and this, that, and the third. But I'm like, you wrote these kids into this in the first place, so she realized how much she fucked up. They go down to Sonny's, right? Now, before they get to Sonny's, Rick was there. I don't know where this came from, but now Rick wants to sit there and be Sonny's lawyer. And Sonny's like, yeah, I have two problems with that. One, I already have a lawyer. Two, I don't trust you. Now, Rick is like, the problem with Diane being, your lawyer is that Diane and Alexis also, one, they got Marco Smith there working there, and two, they also represent Sitwell. And Sonny was like, even with that being said, I don't have no reason to rock with you. Rick is like, I have a nearly foolproof plan to make sure that you keep the peers. He doesn't say what it is, like, there. He says, like, kind of like during a commercial. And Sonny's like, that's actually really a genius plan. He's still not fully sold on it, right? So Rick is like, I'll think about it, like, just think about it, and he leaves. and that's when Emma and Geo get there, and tell Sonny about the plan and everything like that, and why Emma did what she did. Now they also want to sit there and try to confess to, I guess, like I don't know, make Rocco be in less trouble. But Sonny's like, that's a bad idea because listen, he's a minor. He may get in some trouble, but y'all gonna get in a whole lot more trouble if y'all sit there in town. And they kind of realize that, so there's not really much they can do. Now, the police bring Rocco down to, the PCPD. And, they go in the interrogation room with Lulu and Nathan, gives those two time to talk. And that's when Lulu has to sit down and tell him, like, yo, you messed up. Like, yeah, your heart was in the right place and everything like that, but like, also, you're you're making in a very bad position for Dante and Laura, which Rocco was already feeling bad enough about her just not being able to do the debate and everything, but she was like messed up, you know. And Dante, I guess, like charged him with like a misdemeanor, just like breaking and entering because well, nothing really got broken or whatever. So he was like, you can go home and just come back in the morning. Now he was cold and very icy, and more importantly, he was disappointed with Rocco. And let me tell you something. It's much more hurtful when a parent is disappointed with you than when they're mad at you. It hurts so much more. But like Lulu was saying, listen, he couldn't be your dad right now. He has to sit there and be, a cop and stuff. Britt summons Sitwell and is like, you need to sit there and rein and Dalton and make him, not pursue this any further. One, she's all like, oh, that's my son or whatever, even though Sitwell's like, that's not your son. But more importantly, it is going to bring cops into, their operation, which is not what they need. So Sitwell does sit there and talk to Dalton and tell him he needs to sit there and let this go. Dalton ain't letting that shit go. Dalton's like, I'm not sitting there having this woman humiliate me and treat me with disrespect like that. I ain't letting this shit go. And I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I'm for it. Also, I saw online that people were upset with the way that Dalton was quote unquote manhandling him, but I'm like, people sit there acting like Dalton whooped his ass or whatever. Like that's not what wound up happening. So I don't understand why people are so. I guess the word is triggered by that because I'm like, you broke into somebody else's lab and stuff like that. Like I don't feel bad for Rocco, and Rocco needed to learn like, bro, you can't just sit there and break the law and then just be like, oh, I'm sorry. Like no, like Lulu said, actions have consequences. And he needed to sit there and learn those consequences today. Um, Britt was there. Britt went to the police station, and Nathan was like, "You don't need to be here. You need to go home." And Britt was like, "Oh, I'm just here for Rocco to make sure he's okay." And Nathan was like, "Yeah, he got a mom for that. Like, he don't need you here." And even when she sat there and asked, like, Rocco, you okay? Is everything okay? Lou was like, "Yeah, you can go home. Like this ain't your business right now." So that happened. Um, and then it was like the Rick and Molly scene, and it's just Rick Smith there. I mean, it's just Molly Smith there working on her book, and talking about how Cody saved her and everything. Like, I mean, Cody saved Rick and everything like that from some imaginary cult and stuff. Um, Also, Molly was at Alexis's office to sit there and say that Justine took Molly off the case, which I don't really understand why. Um, but he's like, listen, it's good because we don't have to sit there and go head to head or whatever. And also, just not there talking about how her relationship with Rick is like really good right now, which I mean, it's just going to symbolize when the truth comes out, just how downhill that whole thing is going to wind up going. I felt like there wasn't really. Oh, and then there was also Chase and well, Chase and that they're getting Nathan up to speed because I guess they're going to be sitting there working on the whole, you know, who killed Judge Harrison case or whatever, and also just informing him that there's going to be, some potential conflict of interest with Willow. Willow being Nathan's niece and Chase's ex-girlfriend. I think they were married at one point, but the point is, there's going to be some, bit of conflict or whatever. I'm gonna be honest, there wasn't really that much else that wound up happening in this episode. It was mostly focused on Rocco and how pretty much everyone wanted to try to either stop it or save him, and you know, I don't know. On one hand, it's like I can't fault Laura for saying that they're trying to talk Dalton down, but I'm like at the same time, I'm like he needed to learn those consequences. Like you can't just do whatever you want to do. Like if she did, I felt like that wouldn't have helped Rocco in the future. So anyway, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like that is generally about it. There wasn't really much to this episode, but I will be doing a live stream tonight. We'll sit there and talk about anything that I want up missing, as well as all the other five soap operas. You know what they are. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and I will see you in the next video.